What key strategies do you believe are essential for building an authentic personal brand?
Number one, authenticity. That's the first place we have to start. And I believe some of the strongest personal brands are the ones that live very closely with our fundamental values as individuals. Take ownership of the narrative of what particularly Black leaders are. We have a big job as Africa, but the economy is ruled by the dollar. I think there is a charm to getting anything that you want, right? So there is something powerful about taking charge of your narrative and being very clear about your why. There's a couple of things to consider here. Firstly, it is...
My guest today is the CEO and founder of Agenda Women, the co-founder of the Fuse Academy. She's founded a creative agency specializing in leveraging celebrity power for brands targeting youth and female. She does so much more. Welcome to the For This Resson Podcast, Nomndeni.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I think let's jump right in. I mean, you're a successful entrepreneur, a speaker on personal branding. What key strategies do you believe are essential for building an authentic personal brand in today's digital era?
Number one, authenticity. That's the first place we have to start. I think, the personal brand narrative exploded, I think immensely in the stages where we are. But, there's some history behind branding that I think sometimes people take for granted. So I'm very lucky that I sit in a space where I've had the opportunity to work on personal brand building with personal brands that have reached celebrity status, and they've been able to continue to monetize the narratives that we had anchored their stories on. And I also studied marketing. So I'm a bit lucky in that I understand branding from the context of commercial branding, but I also understand it from a personal brand perspective. And for me, that understanding is fundamental with anyone who says that they are speaking on personal branding or helping you with your personal brand. So I could pick some key aspects to personal branding, but I think it's not as simple as that. We always believe that marketing is a bit of science and culture to it, and there is some understanding that you need to have before you really guide and direct people in terms of what direction they should take when they think about their brands.
So interesting. Branding is a combination of science and culture.
Yeah.
Let's break those two down. Let's start with the science aspect of it. What is it that we look at? Is this social following? Is it... I don't know. What is it that we look at the science part?
It's a little deeper than that. And I do find that people look at the optics versus understanding psychologically what is the behavioral science that you're engaging with. Because when you build a personal brand, you are communicating to people. And in order to communicate to the people, you need to understand behaviorally, how do they exist and how do they move in different ecosystems. If you're in China, and you are going in there for a business deal, there is a cultural context you need to understand in order to engage the people in China and really get your close. If you are in KwaZulu-Natal, I'm Zulu, so there's a way that you can engage someone who is maybe very culturally embedded around how you close deals. So it's a little deeper than just optics. It's really understanding who your audience is and what is the behavioral science within the ecosystem in which they exist. So that's why I say, for me, I'm passionate about it, and I am passionate about humans and understanding why they behave the way that they behave. In a way, it's almost like a game, right? If people behave this way and I show up this way, do I get the thing that I want from them? So personal branding is also a bit of a science and bit of understanding of what cultural contexts are.
And maybe let's go into those cultural contexts, because I understand the science of it to say, human beings are creatures of habit, and if you do one, they will respond in this way. But the cultural aspect of it, what are we looking at? Are we looking at the culture as in Amvenda, Yo Zulu, etc., or is it more the culture that we find ourselves in, like demure, being a cultural term now?
I think it's a bit of both, right? Because I think there is a charm to getting anything that you want, right? And it's very difficult to charm a person who you don't understand what they value. for me to engage you in a charming manner, there are things that are behavioral, but there are things that can stand out for you because maybe you're a vendor man and my understanding maybe of what cultural context means for you, what you appreciate from your culture. There's a way that I can finesse all of that in order to get what I want. So in personal branding, it's also important to understand what the objectives are. You don't just build a personal brand for the sake of building a personal brand. A lot of times it is maybe in a corporate context, you want to climb the corporate ladder. If you're an entrepreneur, you want to be known for a particular narrative. You want to position yourself in a particular way so you're top of mind in specific conversations. So even as you start to navigate building a personal brand, the objectives are key. Because if you don't have objectives, you will be pulled in many directions. There's a lot going on in the world. So if you are in the observing the cultural context of very mindful, for instance, very demure, you want to understand what people are engaging in. If you want to be top of mind on trends, for instance, for someone like me, really doesn't do much for me to understand that, but maybe it does a lot to really understand how do I speak to people? How do I engage with people? How do I live a particular idea of who I am in every touch point, because that's what we speak about also in branding, it's touch points. So when you are experiencing a website for a brand, I won't mention a brand, I've learned now not to mention brands a lot, but you engage with a website for a particular brand, you go to the store and there's a consistent way in which it maybe showcases luxury. You start to trust that brand. There is also the aspects of consistency when building brands. So when we talk about culture, it is in essence going to be what is it that you're looking for, and therefore which cultural context is then the one that you need to be observing.
Very interesting. I mean, people talk about that's not my brand.
Yeah.
It doesn't align with my brand. Are we getting to a point where personal brands are the same as corporate brands, where if you automatically hear Omo, in my mind I hear Samoreka, oh,
yes.
Oh, yes. It was so indoctrinated, right? Vodacom is red. Is it that personal brands are getting to that level where we now know that, okay, Vodacom is red and this individual is this?
Yeah. It's the principles are very similar. I don't want to say that a personal brand is the same as a corporate brand. The principles, though, are very similar because both are selling to people. So in essence, the science behind the decisions that are made are very, very similar. So when you think about maybe big celebrities, for instance, when you think about if someone mentions Beyonce, there are key moments that you think about that have defined who she is and how she is. And if you're a fan, you might even have more. But there are some that even for people who were not fans, they were exposed to, and they started to define what they believe of her. So when she puts out a behind-the-scenes movie to a concert, it's well thought out. And if it is meant to position her as a hardworking singer, and therefore that is the reason that she is Beyonce, then every single thing that is decided on the production, what are we showing, how are we showing it? Is she telling us that she hasn't eaten for 7 days? Is she telling us that she stopped eating meat? All of these things are touch points, but they also concede, right? She can do that and then go ahead and launch a vegan brand, right? Because now we know that this is something that is fundamental to her lifestyle. We believe it. She's established trust, and therefore she can sell us on that trust. So the principles are the same, but corporate brands are not the same as personal brands. However, strong personal brands can build strong corporate brands.
I have a very interesting engagement, and I think I want to be vulnerable and personal so that we can discuss it with me, right? So my YouTube channel has got about 70,000 followers, and it's very much a political YouTube channel that I used for my political campaigning. And when I started this podcast for this reason, it was a strategic decision to say, let's start it anew or on a new YouTube page because it's not a political thing. And we don't want to bring people that want to tell their stories for the reason why into the politics of it. And when I did that and we dropped the first video and I said, but this video is not doing well.
Yes.
Let's take it back to the old page.
Yes.
And somebody said to me, but hold on, the brands are not communicating, you know. And I said, oh, but that doesn't matter. Let's go for the views. And they said, it does. But maybe let me throw that into it to say, with Omo will always create soap.
Yeah.
And that's what we know it has.
Yes.
But with personal brands, what happens in the evolution of it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it depends. If you came to me, for instance, and you asked me that question, there's a couple of questions I would ask you. and some of the questions that come to mind.
We can do this.
So the first thing would be, what is it that you want to achieve as Mpho, right? What is the end game, right? Sometimes people struggle with that, but maybe sometimes you meet people who will say, you know what, this is how I want to exist, or this is how I want to be impactful. So that would be the first thing. Like, what is the end game? Why do these two properties exist?
So the end game is to become the president of South Africa. That would be you're saying the end goal.
Yes.
That's the end goal.
So tell me how these two channels, and I'm going to call it channels because that's all I have on the table now.
Yeah.
How do you believe these two channels get you to that?
So the political channel, it aligns me with people that vote, with political people. I'm growing political constituents. For this reason is me trying to get to the younger generation. Because a lot of the voters in South Africa don't vote because they believe that politicians are just there to make money. So I had to be a different politician to say, hold on, I'm not just wearing suits here and going for meetings. I'm actually sitting down with South Africans and creating a podcast where we're not talking about jokes or just laughing, but where you can learn something and take some information and begin to understand how people are building and what is the reason behind building. So the one opens me up to a broader voting base, and the other one continues to maintain the political side of things.
Why did you assume that the audience you had here is not in need of the same thing that you're building for this new audience?
That's a very interesting question.
Immediately for me,
it
feels like you're not moving away from the fact that you're a politician. So if you have a political channel, that's what we want to know you for. Is there no risk in someone experiencing you here and assuming that you're not a politician and therefore having to be reintroduced to Mpho, the politician, when they go back to your initial political channel? If you had come to me, I would have said, keep it on the political channel. It's not something you're running away from. In actual fact, I think it's beautiful to be able to integrate politics into our day-to-day lives. There is politics, we can't escape it. It affects me anywhere that I am. It's actually powerful to be educated on what is personal branding in politics. How do you personal brand as a politician? Why do we have a Barack Obama being a prominent political figure with a very strong personal brand, and we're not seeing that in the African continent? To me, this is a powerful integration as one channel, maybe different playlists, but you get in front of the mic and you say, I'm Mpho, and I think it's important that we have conversations like this, and I'm still a politician, and I want to get to know you better.
Wow. I mean, these are beautiful insights, and I guess that's why people pay you for this thing. I'm glad I'm getting it for free.
I really think you should think about it.
But maybe as I pry further to you, I think my concern was, or the team felt that people would not want to come because they wouldn't want to associate with a political party. And that was the concern, to say, but individuals might feel like, he sometimes does political content on the show. But my argument to that is that you look at podcast Podcast and Chill with McG. There's the McG show and there's a different show. So they do exist differently.
Absolutely.
And I think that's interesting. So you're saying the channel should go...
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know you well. I know the political party. Like I Googled a little bit before I came. And there's something refreshing about where the political party is, and I believe where you are. I've interfaced with a lot of politicians, and I believe you as you talk to me across the room right now. I believe in what you're saying you want to do. Doesn't mean it will be successful, doesn't mean that it won't work. But I think there is benefit to leveraging who you are as an individual. Your principles are your principles. They're not going to change whether I find you in this channel or the other channel. I don't think you should make a fear-based decision on this one. I really believe that people that change the world are the people that live boldly, that just say, this is who I am, and we're going to figure it out, and we're going to learn, and we're going to educate people, and we're going to show them that there are human beings who are running countries, who are politicians, who are passionate about impacting people's lives. And I want to speak to people, and I can tell you, even if this was on your political channel, which I have not seen, I would probably still have come.
That's so profound. I mean, I'm definitely going to take that advice. I think you give perfect advice. But maybe to take it further, to say, what makes you so good at what you do? What what is it that makes you, because I mean, we just had a consultation here. What is it that makes what just happened happen?
I think some of the people who are great at what they do, it's a bit of education and life experience. You know, you can go to a therapist and of course they will sit with you and they will follow the psychology book, right? There's rules around how you engage people. But I think what they hear and their ability to hear you and listen, it's a bit more crystallized as they navigate life and they understand how life works and what life is. Outside of the context of their education, that somehow elevates their ability to help their clients. I think for me, studying marketing, of course, it was a passion point, although I bumped into it. It was a subject I really loved. But fundamentally, I'm really curious about people. And even as I navigate conversations like this, I am not sold on that I'm right. I can help you probe, and we can agree that what we're talking about is making sense, and we can probe further if it's not making sense. I think the ability to do that allows for an engagement that opens the person up to who they are. And I believe some of the strongest personal brands are the ones that live very closely with our fundamental values as individuals.
Wow, that's so profound. Some of the strongest brands are the ones that live very closely with our personal
fundamental values. You going out and performing every day is exhausting. But going out and living out the best version of who you are is empowering. So when you help someone create a personal brand that lives very closely to their fundamental values, it's very easy for them to show up and consistently as that, because consistency is crucial when you build a brand, because at the core of it, you want people to trust that what you say and what you do are very much aligned. The ability to marry those two is fundamentally rooted in some of the values that you carry as an individual. If you say, as Mpho, one of my values maybe is integrity. I will act in integrity when no matter what circumstances I'm interfacing with. You can say that, but if it's not true, I don't even want to say life will test you. Life experiences will show us who you are. I've had many situations, Mpho, where I know I'm a person of integrity, but I don't know until it's tested. At the beginning, I want to be a person of integrity until there's 10 million rands on the table and I have to make a decision that is either aligned with integrity or not. Who I believe I am and who I say I am is what's going to make that decision. And I have walked away from very difficult situations where I felt, gosh, I could have really changed my life. But I knew at the core of who I am, I was not going to be able to live with that decision. I can't do that if I am not a person of integrity. So when I do that, and to be transparent, and I'm not going to mention names, I had a situation where I had a dealing with a billionaire who wanted to offer me a lot of money for a business that they wanted me to start, and they wanted to absorb a business that I owned at the time. And I took my time in investigating who this person is, what are their values, why are they choosing me, not even from a place of thinking I don't deserve it or thinking I'm small, but I believe that if you're going to spend a lot of money, you have thought it out, right? And it was a process that took almost 6 months before I decided that I'm not going to engage. And at the end, it wasn't even the person that I was speaking with, but it was some of the people involved in the business that made me recognize this was not aligned with my values. So in the long run, it was not going to work, and it was going to dent my reputation. To this day, I have a great relationship with this gentleman, because one of the things he said to me when I first met him is, everyone I've asked says you have integrity. And what are the chances that at the end, the decision that does not allow us to work together is based on the fact that I have integrity?
That's so profound. I mean, where did the journey begin for you? Because you studied marketing management at the University of Johannesburg. But where did your journey begin? Did you always know that marketing was different?
I absolutely did not. And I love that question, because it allows me to share maybe parts of my journey that will allow anyone who's listening in and feeling like they're not clear about what they want to do, or whether they are great or whether they can be great. I hope this part of this conversation gives them ease. I was born in Nomndeni in Newcastle, small town in KZN. My family is originally from Pretoria and Joburg, but they found themselves there because my grandparents were entrepreneurs. And there wasn't much you're exposed to at the time. And I don't think it was just me. I think across the country, as people of color, we had very limited options around career choices. And that was the same for me. So as I, navigated my way through school, when I got to matric, I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do. And because I was performing well at school, I thought I have to do the mathematical stuff, right? I have to be an engineer, because there's a way, I think, in our culture where, not even our culture, just generally parents want to brag about you, right? So if I'm an engineer, I'm giving them something to brag about. I had not matured to understand who I am enough. So I think I chose like biochemistry or something like that. I still don't know what it is to this day. But it was the thing that I felt would sound great if my grandparents are talking about me and I'm smart. And that's what smart people do. I had absolutely no career guidance. I had no radar around who I was. And one of the most powerful things I've discovered about life is it will give you clues, and life will meet you where you are. And if you're brave and courageous enough, you'll follow those clues, and eventually you'll find yourself exactly where you need to be. And that's what's happened in my life. I then come across a prospectus and I'm reading through, and I hate maths, and I'm looking for the thing that does not require me to do anything mathematical. And I come across marketing, and I read through and I'm like, this sounds fascinating. I was always a person who was fascinated by advertising. So, when there were ads, you would leave the room. I would stay because I wanted to listen to the jingles. I just really loved it. But I also loved watching Generations, and they had Ezweni. And I never really understood what it was until I read that prospectus. And that's how I found myself in marketing. And it's been testament to a lot of ways that I found myself here, Mpho. It's listening in on life's clues and following the breadcrumbs and trusting by honoring myself that I will find myself exactly where I need to be.
I mean, you then jumped into corporate. You worked for the big corporates.
For like 2 seconds, Mpho.
Okay.
I literally worked for 2 seconds. I did 1 year in the first corporate. I did another year in the second corporate. But what's interesting in hindsight is the decision I made around working for those corporates is because they were South African founders. But I didn't know what that meant. It just drew me.
Yeah.
When I read the story of DSTV and MultiChoice, and I was just like, I need to meet these people. In my naivety, I thought I would meet them if I worked there. But these are huge organizations. So never met the guys who founded MultiChoice. But it excited me to be in an environment with entrepreneurs that felt like they were at reach. I didn't even know the word entrepreneur at the time. And then I went on to work at Discovery Health. I was obsessed with Adrian Gore. I think I still am a little bit, because there is something fascinating about his founder story. And I was very lucky, at least with him. I met him. I happened to be on a flight from Hong Kong after I'd left the business. And I happened to be on those lucky flights where I was in business. And I remember we waited because someone is running late, and it happened to be him. And I made it clear to the cabin crew that I need to sit next to him and I need to chat to him. And he was so kind, and he exposed me to so much information around his thinking and some of the decisions that he made. So the clues were there. I was drawn to entrepreneurship. I was drawn to building businesses. I was drawn to the excitement of solving problems. I just didn't know what it was. And I think so many young people in this country are in that position where they are talented, but they have no idea how they can monetize their talent. What is the talent? What is the job that they can do? And I think I appreciate platforms like this because they can expose them. This could be another clue for someone that, hey, maybe I need to understand what my talent is and what it is when it's a job. So that's a story, I think, of a lot of young people, maybe around the world, maybe in this country. But that's why I worked for those corporates. I was drawn to the founder stories. And when I was there, I was like, I'm not in the boardroom. This is not for me. I'm not the person that actually brings the vision. I'm not one piece of a big machine when it comes to that. I get bored very quickly. I love solving problems. I love solving big problems. So I exited and I started my first business, which was a DJing school for girls.
Yeah. I think we're going to come to the DJing school for girls because I think that's a very interesting one. But I want to ask the question to say many people are fearful to call themselves a brand. I've often found, just through my research, that a lot of people would rather say, no, I don't want to be a personal brand. I don't want people to know me. And a lot of times you find that it's the people that should be brands that usually say that, yeah. But how does one overcome that fear of being, because I guess when you're a brand, people now know, they see you, they discuss.
There's a responsibility.
Yeah.
Responsibility.
How do you deal with people that are saying, I don't want to be a brand?
I'm absolutely loving your questions because they're allowing me to reflect as well. There's two individuals in the NBA. I won't mention their names, both very passionate about the African continent. And they have committed to making sure that the NBA is in the continent, and they've succeeded. The one has a very strong personal brand, the other doesn't. And in navigating their personal pursuits, both of them have foundations, both of them have titles in the NBA. In navigating their personal pursuits, the one with a stronger personal brand has been able to get to the higher rankings of the global NBA, and the other one has managed to do what he wanted to do, which was really to be present in the continent. Now, when you look at these two individuals, both of them are extremely impactful, but maybe one has a global impact and one has a continental impact. But with both, you can see that was their intention. They actually both got what they wanted. However, what the conversation was at some point is, in this global space, there aren't enough Africans who are in the decision-making rooms. So this one individual who is a close friend said to me, I had to make the decision to be the person that drives that change. I think when it comes to personal branding and making the decision of building a personal brand, it has to be clear to you what you want to achieve. And that's why my first question was, what is your objective? At the core of the decisions that you make as you navigate building a personal brand, you'll be anchored on your why. Why are you doing it? Why do you exist? Why do you want to be this personal brand, and why do you want to tell that story? I'm going to be very honest in saying, even for myself, I did not want to be known for a very long time. It just kept happening. And at a much later stage in my life, I realized that I want to have a strong and global personal brand myself, not only for the gains that I would have, but for the shift in the narrative of Black business woman. Not just in South Africa, not just in the continent, but in the world. And I know that if I do that well, what it means for the young Black girls that come after me. Beyond that objective, I also understand that there's a responsibility. So for a long time, I did not want that responsibility as well. I was not conscious. But when I reflected, I realized that the thing that made me not want to be that is because I didn't want to carry the responsibility. So for a lot of people in C-suite positions who are leaders in this country, it is important that we take ownership of the narrative of what particularly Black leaders are. And if we don't do that, someone else is going to tell that story. And if it's not us, it will be tainted by their view of our experiences. So it is beyond just what we get. It is about shifting an entire narrative. It is about changing generations in families. It is about helping us see ourselves differently because we're reflected in excellence. And I think that's why I try in every way that I can, even the work that I do in Agenda Women, to tell these stories of powerful women and also encourage them to tell their stories more, because it's beyond just them. When they're no longer here, the story dies with them. One of the most powerful things that America has done is tell an American story. Have you ever landed in New York and gotten a very different experience of that American story?
Yes.
But even as you live New York, you still understand that there's something called an American dream.
Yeah.
And people believe it. America does not have resources like Africa does. But the economy is ruled by the dollar. And a lot of it is because of the stories that they've told us.
The brand.
It's the brand. It's the perception that we have.
Sure.
Of what America is.
So profound.
So there is something powerful about taking charge of your narrative and being very clear about your why. And I want to encourage everyone to really think beyond themselves. we have a big job as Africa. We have a big task ahead of us. And we might not see the change in our lifetime, but we have to start. We have to start, and we have to encourage people to think differently about the way that things are and what they can become.
I mean, talking about branding, and you put it so beautifully, a lot of people usually then say, right, once you've chosen your why and the direction of the brand, there's messages that come out, right?
Absolutely.
And perhaps then the question is, should the messages that come out be tied to the brand? And maybe let me go a bit deeper. It was very interesting for me to see Kim Kardashian as a personal brand. And, I never followed Kim Kardashian for a very long time because she was just not in my radar. Right? But the day I saw Skims and somebody, I think I saw an article saying Skims is hitting 1 billion or something, I was like, this Kim Kardashian that I know is a business person, right? And somebody said to me, oh no, do you know how she got famous? And I was like, their family. And they said, no, it was a sex tape. And I was like, how? Where? I never saw. And as they said that, I thought, okay, so that she was tied to that. But now I think Skim sponsored the Olympics and everything else.
They dress all the NBA, most of the NBA players.
And maybe then my question to you is to say, is there room for personal brands to evolve?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There is room for personal brands to evolve. And one of the reasons I asked you the question of objectives is because I was curious about, is that what's happening for you? Are you evolving from, a politician to something else? So when you said to me, when you explained your audience and your why, it sounded to me like you are not necessarily evolving out of a particular role, but you're extending, right? You're extending the radar of what it means to be a politician and how you can engage with communities and people. So with Kim, it's absolutely fascinating for someone like me to watch that kind of evolution. And it's not just a deep understanding of branding, but it's a lot of hard work. If someone like a Steve Jobs went out and started a brand, maybe like Skims, and was behind the scenes and had had the brand, it's much easier. He has an understanding of the landscape. And can you imagine for a girl who has to do away with the stigma of having a sex tape to do the kind of evolution that she's done and get to where she is now, where whether you respect her or not, you need her audience. And she has that audience by the grip. So there's a couple of things to consider here. Firstly, it is respecting the work that went into the evolution itself. The second thing is the ability to make decisions and be courageous. You cannot do what she has done if you're not courageous. I have observed Kim Kardashian since the beginning. I watched the Kardashians. I am fascinated by their story. Even at the beginning, I could see the things that they were doing intentionally and things that they were going to build outside of those things. And they understood who their audience is, and they understood that they're going to build trust with this audience.
They planned it.
I absolutely don't think it's a mistake. I think often what happens when you build a brand is there are certain things that come up that you might have not thought about, but you have to be intentional from the beginning around, this is my audience, there's 5 of them. This is what I want to say to them. And if I say it well, they'll tell other people. And if the people come and they experience me and it's the same thing that those people said, they'll go and tell other people because there is trust and consistency. So if I say to you, I'm a prostitute and I'm building a community around prostitution, for instance, and I'm deliberately choosing this example because I don't want people to think it has to be something glamorized and really respected. Anything you choose and decide that you're going to do, there's a system in how you build from it. You are that thing consistently to the people that you said you're going to communicate to, the people that they're communicating to. Because if that person goes and tells someone else and they experience me differently, they're dropping off. They're not coming into my community. They're not coming into my tribe. So when you understand what you want to say, who you want to say it to, consistently say it, that's what you do. And when you choose to evolve, you decide, with this evolution, I might lose some of the people, but this is what I understand they liked about me. So I'm still going to keep my body. I'm still going to keep the good looks as Kim Kardashians. I'm still going to tell that narrative. But I'm going to evolve. And when I get into this room, this is what I'm going to tell them about how many people they have access to through me.
Sure. And I think, the more you say this, I'm now thinking about Rihanna to say, we all knew Rihanna because
as a musician.
Yeah. And, now she's a boardroom woman.
Absolutely.
And I think that's so profound. But maybe let me come to this to say, is the personal brand overtaking or becoming the corporate brand?
The corporate brand. That's such an interesting question.
Is it that because before social media, we used to know that if you wanted clothing, Edgar, it was
Filtham.
yeah, there was no name behind it, right? But now I hear people say, okay, well, I'm Skims, I'm Fenty. I mean, I met a friend of mine the other day, and I said, can I please borrow your class? I was just asking for lip stuff. He said, no, this is Fenty. So I was like, okay, and I'm seeing this thing happen. I'm like, could this be something happening?
Yeah. I mean, for instance, with that Fenty example, I guess it's the same as saying this is Dior or this is LV, right? And it's because of the positioning of the brand and the celebrity status that comes with Rihanna and what we believe she can afford, therefore what she can sell to us at, right?
Sure. I can't believe our minds do that.
Yeah. Subconsciously, it happens in seconds.
And is that why influencer marketing done right could work?
Absolutely. Some of the most powerful marketing right now is influencer marketing. I know.
Because you believe if this person is using it, then it means...
If this person is traveling all the time and they're showing me guest bags, I mean, let's say Louis Vuitton and Prada and Dior, and suddenly they have a brand of their own and they're selling it to me at 5,000 rands, I don't think they're lying to me. Why would they lie to me? Because they can afford more.
And they've been consistent.
And they could be lying to you. But they've built trust. They've sold me a particular narrative. And now I can attach a product to that narrative and they can continue to monetize. It's not an easy thing, right? Because running a business is still running a business.
Yeah.
But you've done half the job by just having a strong narrative and having trust with people that if I say, this product that I'm selling you is 10,000 rands and it's a bag made of leather, and you could have made it in China, I believe you because you're carrying a bag that I'm willing to pay 70,000 rands for. So this is actually cheap now.
Sure. Yeah, these are very profound things. I think our minds do these things and we don't have a school teacher to...
And that's why it's a science.
Yeah.
That's why it's a science. The idea of marketing and branding is very closely linked to behavioral science. And if you invest in understanding that, then you understand how to seed. You understand where to position things. You understand when people walk in this room, what do I need to place where in order for them to believe the next thing that I'm going to put in front of them.
Yeah.
All of it is a science, and better understanding that puts you in a better position when building brands.
Is the magic pill of the whole science being authentic? Because if you're authentic, you never need to pretend.
I really believe that the people that have done some of these things well, the reason authenticity is important is because you have to be consistent.
Wow.
Building a sustainable and strong brand requires a lot of consistency. And I remember one of the celebrities whose brand I built, she would say to me in addressing me on my personal brand, she would say, you get bored too easily. And you start to think because you don't value the thing, the people are not waiting for it. You have to just do it. Whether it bores you and you've gotten over it, you have to do it until it sticks.
Yeah.
You do it until it sticks. And if you're not being authentic, you'll get tired.
Sure. And I think, it reminds me of a story where somebody was explaining to me to say McDonald's or KFC might not make the best chicken or make the best burger, but because they're consistent,
they're
the moment
giving you a bad burger.
Even if
if that's the case, right?
Yeah.
They're consistent. When you go there, you know exactly what you're going to get.
And it breaks the question to say, your good burger place, because on Sunday it's closed and on public holiday it's closed.
And it's not convenient.
The other time somebody was not there. Because of
the
the lack
other
of
day it didn't really taste the way it tasted the day before. So I don't really know what I'm going to get. Can you imagine living home?
Sure.
And you're anticipating having a good burger and you're disappointed.
Yeah, but the buns are sold out.
Psychologically, what that does to you, they've lost a client because next time you might try it 2 times or 3 times. You're not going to go back the 4th time. But the magic of some of these fast food retailers is the consistency in whatever it is that they're giving you. When I go to KFC and I'm going to get wings, I know exactly what I'm going to get.
Yeah.
I know exactly what it's going to do to my body. And I've made a decision that is what is happening today. So that's the power of consistency. It's the thing, we're very habitual in nature.
It's like going to gym. Whatever.
Yeah, we're habitual and we're very routine-based. We like familiarity. It gives us safety and security. This is the science of it, right? So if I trust that Mpho is going to show up looking this way, or Mpho is going to be on time, it gives me a security around engaging with you. I know what to expect of you. I know what your brand is. So I'm gonna choose you. Maybe you're not the best speaker, but I know you'll come prepared. I know you'll be on time. I know you'll have a suit, and I know you'll smell good. I know what I'm getting. I know what I'm buying. Versus someone who had a great speaking engagement one day, and then the other time they kind of came late and they were not. That doesn't give me security around engaging with you. And it's the same even when I buy Fenty. I'm expecting that the formulation is in a particular way, the glitter, all of that. And when I go there, that's what I trust that I'm going to get.
I mean, as you're speaking, I'm now thinking social media. And the reason I'm speaking social media is because I had a session with one of my social media coaches. And she was basically saying, look, the algorithm wants you to be consistent. And the more consistent, the more reward you'll get. And I'm just thinking about this to say, it also comes back to the same conversation of marketing.
The difference, though, I can say, even for myself with social media, is all the work that you have to do. It's one thing for me to sit and speak to
you. No, you're right.
Right?
Yeah.
This is me. Right? There's no algorithm. Yeah, it's just me.
You don't need captions. You don't need a filter.
It's quite a lot of work. It's quite a lot of work. Yeah. But I think there's two parts for me to it. You know, it's when you get into those environments where there's technology and you're thinking about outcome. And I guess at the core of every answer I can give any person is, what are we trying to achieve? Right?
The why.
The why. And I think it's very dangerous to take advice on everything when people don't know your why. So even the stuff that we're talking about, it could be true to one person, it might be untrue to someone else, depending on their why. So it's the same when it comes to social media for me, where it's, yes, you can post consistently and get big numbers, or you can post at a particular time and people can know that they catch you at that time, and that's your cult. Those are the people that you can convert, because there's conversion also, right? There is a famous story in marketing of an influencer that had 2 million followers and they couldn't sell one T-shirt. So are we going to play a numbers game, or are we going to play a trust game, even on social media? And how are we going to do that? What are we consistently going to share with the people that we're talking to? And when on a day when they're looking for a particular type of content, they're going to click through and go to me. They're not necessarily going to swipe through and do everything else that we just do because we're hooked, which is a book, by the way, on social media. It's called Hooked. People know what they get when they come to Mpho. Is that what you want to do, or you want to build numbers, or you want to do a bit of both? Because it can be also a bit of both.
And what about the people that sort of split themselves? Because, you know, you walk into a business and you sort of hear that, okay, this business does this, that, and the other. And then you walk into another business and they're like, sorry, we only do this. And I've often asked myself the question, and I think it was an interesting question that I learned in business school, to say, how come businesses don't do everything if they can, right? And I sort of got to understand that, okay, they've evaluated their relationships and everything else and realized that. But maybe let's look at personal brand, because I get concerned when I see a social media influencer today advertising Spar, tomorrow advertising ShopRite, the next day advertising Amazon, the next day advertising. And my concern is always,
Is it true?
Yeah.
It's a trust issue.
It's a trust issue, and also an issue of like, highest bidder. You don't have my best interest at heart, right? And maybe that's the question I want to ask, to say, should personal brands stick to their lane? Like if maybe somebody's a personal brand on cars, maybe if they built a personal brand on that this person is a car person, and the next day we find them selling vegetables, you know, should personal brands stick in their lane, or are they allowed to focus on different? And
so it's subjective for me. So I'm going to stick to both examples.
Okay.
So for instance, with social media influencers, when you think about the number of products in your bathroom, it's not one product. So if a social media influencer comes and says, I use this cleanser, or I'm trying this cleanser and it's a beauty cleanser, and then tomorrow I'm trying this one, that seems fair.
Yeah.
It's something, it seems fair. You know, I use multiple products in the kitchen. I use multiple products when cleaning. I use multiple products when it comes to beauty as well. However, if you say, for instance, you're going to speak on a particular topic, let's say for me it's personal branding and it's female leadership. And, maybe there's three that kind of link with the work that I do and who I say I am. You kind of see it maybe through, my timeline, and you're like, oh, okay, Nomndeni woman makes sense. Nomndeni personal branding, yeah, she did that in the past and she's still building brands today, makes sense. When a person is making a decision to spend a lot of money, they take a little bit more time than when they're making a decision to buy a hat. So depending on which space you're in, you have to really think about how much consideration does your consumer make when making the decision to buy your services or to hire you to be the CMO or CEO or to vote for you. It's quite an important and big decision. So it's going to matter to me how many things you're doing and how you're doing them and how they mix with what I'm making a decision on. So if I have to make a decision between someone who flip-flops between vegetables and mechanics and someone who just does mechanics, I'm probably going to trust this person more. Doesn't mean that no one will come to this side, but the high-value individuals, more numbers will probably gravitate towards this direction. So it's a matter of outcome versus you'll have 0 followers or we won't trust you at all. There'll be 500 people who trust you. But here there might be 1 million who know exactly what they get when they come to this person, and that's what they go to that person for.
Wow, so profound. I mean, you're a huge advocate for empowering women. Your platforms like Agenda Women and the Fuse Academy. And you also started, I believe it was the first in Africa, female DJ school with DJ Zinhle.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Breadcrumbs, the clues, and I can tell you many stories of clues and how things have happened in my life. So when I realized that I am not designed for corporates, around the time Zinhle was talking to me about being to Soul Candy and studied DJing, but having felt that really she was the girl in the room and there were a lot of guys. And the only reason I jumped on that opportunity was because I wanted to get out of corporate. And when I started working on, the systems, how do I get people? Where do we go? When they get to the school, how do we sign them in? I got lost in the world of solving those problems and creating systems for that business and thinking through how much money we can make. How do we teach people how to do it? Because we start off with nothing and investigating, there's this school, I found the school, they can give us a license, the license can give us. I got lost in the problem solving. And that was the clue for me that said, you're an entrepreneur. And maybe at the time I did not even call it an entrepreneur, but I knew that I am a person who builds their own businesses. That school being a school for girls was partly the work that we understood we needed to do to position DJ Zinhle's brand. We knew that we needed to have a strong narrative, and that could be a proof point. And we were going to enjoy it anyway because we like girls. So we hit 2 birds with 1 stone in that we were able to develop a business that was impactful, but it also really anchored her narrative and brand around female empowerment at the time. And we also borrowed from the fact that she was one of the very few female DJs at the time, and it just made sense. Beyond circumstantially being one of the few female DJs at the time, now we were anchoring our commitment to empowering women as well. It's interesting. I always say, if that business and my second business had a baby, it would be the business that I do now. I did not know necessarily that I was passionate about women, but the more I engaged with the girls there, I realized how much it fueled me and excited me to see change in young girls, seeing them coming in to come and learn how to be a DJ and live and maybe not be a DJ, but live with a clear idea of who they are, what they want to do, and just more confidence around the pursuits that they were going to go on beyond Fuse Academy. So a lot of the girls didn't become DJs, but they became architects because in that point in their lives, what I found, particularly we had only Black girls coming to the school, they were coming from environments that were traumatic and music was an escape. And they thought they wanted to play music, but they didn't realize that if they solved for the healing part, then something else could emerge in who they are. So it was a beautiful space where we could really connect with young women and see them go out and do amazing things in the world.
Wow, that's so profound. And let's talk about the birth of the child, which is the business you do now. What is it that you do in terms of the practicalities of the business?
So we're a multimedia business and we continue to grow because last year we introduced a retail division to the business. I recently said to someone, it's always difficult for me to explain what Agenda Woman does because we solve women problems. So essentially I spend every day, right, working on content and engaging with working woman narratives and content, right? And when I see a problem in those spaces, I go back to my team and I try and figure out how we can solve the problem. I understand that I sit in a bit of a privileged position when it comes to access, and the access allows me to solve the problems. So essentially when I started, for me, it was a content platform, right? I every time I would be looking for content, looking for how do you write a contract, right? A HR contract in South Africa. How do you negotiate a salary? It would be Forbes, it would be Business Insider. It was all publications that were global that did not have the South African context, forget even the female South African context. So for me, I wanted to create content that would help with those type of challenges. So when people go online, they can find and resolve those. And then I took it a step further and I had a deep need for connection myself in that point in my life. I'd been an entrepreneur, I think, for I was approaching 10 years, if I wasn't over 10 years, and I understood some of the challenges that I had, and I understood the value of mentorship and community. And I wanted to actively create that for other women. I didn't want it to be a coffee shop conversation. I wanted to do something about it. So these two pillars were the beginning of Agenda Woman, the content pillar and the community pillar. Over time, as I engaged with the women in the community, and I saw which content they were gravitating towards, I understood firstly that this was not content that was just going to be for founders. We had a huge outpouring of women in corporate saying, we need help. We don't know how to speak to our seniors because it's a bit of am I trying to get a job? Is this the truth? Is this something that benefits the organization and not me? We need platforms outside of our organizations that can empower us. So when we started curating content, we were clear that we were speaking to two audiences. It was founders, it was corporate women, but it was just working women. That's what I understood. And as we started to see some of the other challenges that they were facing, we started to develop programming. So we have a beautiful content piece that sits on YouTube actually called Agenda Woman Money Dates. And that just addresses financial literacy and understanding how to navigate creating wealth, particularly focused on women. And that's a program that came because we saw that there was a need. And then we started Agenda Woman Brand & Co. It's called AW Brand & Co. And it's a pop-up store that we had at Mall of Africa last year. And what I did with that was I had trialed and experimented, I love experimenting, at the Agenda Women Summit, which is our flagship event, with creating opportunity for female founders to sell to our audience. And I realized that that was fine. You know, there's markets, there's stores, and there's all of that. But why are they not dreaming bigger? Why is there no access to the 10,000 people that walk through Mall of Africa every day for this community as well? So I went to Mall of Africa and I negotiated with them, and we were able to secure space, and we onboarded about 15 female founders. During the Christmas season, it was very important that it should be high traffic. Also very important that people had disposable income so that they could at least test, you know. And we were able to reach 6 figures very quickly in that space. And some of the feedback we got from the founders was, number one, I never thought I could make that much money. Number two, I never thought that people who don't know me can buy from me, because a lot of them were on social media. So people were buying because I know you. Yeah. So essentially what we're doing at Agenda Woman is solving for the barriers, which are internal and external to the economic empowerment of women. So if that's a founder, we'll figure that out. If it's a corporate working woman, we'll figure that out. And when you go to corporate, there's gender pay gaps. You know, how do we sit in a position where we use our access, influence, and power really to really shift how women are experiencing success?
That's so profound. And I mean, you've obviously had a lay of the land in terms of female entrepreneurship and women founders. In the past few years, and maybe let's look at a 5-year context, do you find that the narrative and the numbers are changing?
Absolutely. So it's interesting. In 2019, I attended the World Economic Forum in Cape Town in 2019, just before COVID. And one of the insights that stood out for me is this data where they shared that at the rate at which we are engaging with the gender equality narrative, it's going to take another 135 years before we see a gender equal society. And for me, it could have been discouraging, but more than anything, it amped up my commitment to really seeing women being economically empowered. Because I said to myself, now I'm not just building a business, I have to build a business that outlives me. Now it called on me to understand succession planning. Now it called on me to be a better leader. Now it called on me to think outside of the limitations of my own experiences and draw from people who are much more powerful than me in building this organization. So having an interfaced and engaged with women in high power positions, they're saying there's a shift that's taking place. It might be slow, and maybe that's what we need to solve for. It's not as big as it needs to be to create recognizable change. So you're seeing, these powerful female leaders in silos. We're not getting a full experience of what is the journey that gets me there. Should that be a program? Should that be a more intense commitment or investment to mentoring? So there's still a lot that we need to figure out. But I just did a panel moderation for women in payments. And these were women in regulations in payment in this country, women who worked for banks, all of them different banks, all of them different payment solutions. And this was a platform that they had asked us to help them create, just focusing on women in payments. And even with them, one of them said when she came in, number one, there were no black people. There were no women. There were very few women who were also white. But now you're seeing that there's black women in those spaces and they are rising up the ranks. There's still a lot of challenges, but we're getting in the room. Now we need to figure out how do we make sure that we're in the room, our voices are also heard there.
Wow, that's so profound. And that's amazing work that you're doing there. If you could have dinner with any 3 women in history who have inspired you, who would they be and what would you hope to learn from them? So they can either be alive or they can be deceased.
That's such a tough question. That is such a common question.
We'll break one by one.
I think, of course, for a lot of women, Oprah comes up immediately. And I could try and say I'm different, but I'm not. And the reason that I also don't want to be different is because even that is a symbol of the power of a personal brand. And if we don't observe it, if we don't acknowledge it, if we're not inspired by it, then we're not going to be able to do better than what she did. So she comes up, and I think what I would want to know, I'm going to take your game further, and I'll give you one question I would ask them. Okay. And I think if I had to have, which I believe that if God keeps her around and God willing, she stays around a lot longer, and I believe I potentially will meet her, I would ask her, what does she think the business that she built? So, she found power in television, and there was a specific trajectory from a career point of view that she took, and decisions as well. There's an amazing podcast called Founders I'm going to share with you, where this guy literally goes out and researches a founder and gives you an hour profile of their entire journey. And it's just him telling you, she did this and she did that. And it was absolutely stunning to hear the decisions that Oprah made to become Oprah. If you were becoming, I don't even want to say an Oprah, but an iteration of the kind of influence that she created, particularly across races in a country that was not ready for her, where does she think that women could emerge from today? Industry specific. And what are they doing if they're 25, and what are they potentially looking at doing when they're 40?
I mean, I'm still stuck at the fact that you said in a country that was not ready for her.
It wasn't ready for her.
So how I mean, firstly, I agree, but I'm still trying to process it. I'm like, it's so true. Actually, America,
they were not ready.
It was Ricky Lake. It was
absolutely.
And here is this black woman with different hair.
Who's not a model.
Who is not skinny and... Oof, okay, well, maybe let's... Because I was about to say go to the second woman, but maybe let's unpack that before we go to the second woman. How did she do it?
So I'm going to give you the honest answer. And this is information that's available for anyone who is obsessed enough to research her. So she tells a lot about her story in different parts, right? She hasn't really written a biography about her life, But one of the things that was very beautiful about listening to the Founders podcast, and particularly the Oprah episode, is because he writes it like, how would it be if it was an autobiography, right? So he reads it out to you like that.
Okay.
So where she's born, the influences, and she listens to interviews that she's done. She finds articles where she's been interviewed, and he puts together this biography. So one of the crucial things that Oprah did is she fired her manager very early on in life because they didn't have the kind of vision that she had. Her vision was big. And I want to encourage anyone with a big vision to find a person that, number one, understands it, but also has the ability to move it forward. Someone who's not in the space that you're in, who's further down the line, or someone who's doing the kind of work that you need to be done for yourself for people who are bigger than you. So she fired her manager and she hired a white lawyer who immediately said to her, how you're going to create wealth is by owning your content in your TV show. There's information that you don't have access to because you don't have access, not because you're stupid. Because you're not speaking in the rooms where these decisions are being made. We live in a highly capitalistic system. In order to create influence, power, wealth, you have to understand how the system works. And the system was not created by you and I.
Of course, yeah.
So she understood that, and she went to the people that created the system in which she wanted to thrive.
That's the best answer I've ever heard, because it definitely comes back, and I've said this before to somebody, to say, if you look at Oprah, you can see that she's not stressed about money. When someone does something, you can see, okay, rent is due. Like, you get that element of like, okay.
You can feel it.
Yeah, like, okay, there's rent here involved. And when you look at Oprah, you're like, okay, Oprah, why aren't you supporting this political candidate? And she's like, oh, because I don't want to. You're like, how? Won't they affect your pay? Where will you eat? And she's just like, no. And when you sit it down, I'm like, oh, shucks. Because the moment she gets that lawyer, she's basically got a voice in.
Absolutely. She also has access to information.
Yeah.
Have you ever been in a situation where someone says, do this? And you're like, but is it allowed? How do I do it? What do I say? How do I greet when I get in the room? And I'm surrounded by people in highly influential positions from all kinds of races. And I see the nuances in terms of some of the simplest things around what do you ask for?
Yeah. I mean, I'm still thinking about Oprah. She owns the properties. She owns the TV show. She owns a series.
Syndicates around the world.
Yeah, I don't know.
She can't do that as a black girl in America at that time. She's getting advice, but she has talent.
Yeah, but she's getting the best advice.
She's getting some of the best advice around how the industry works. Have you ever tried to negotiate a deal for yourself when you don't even believe that actually I'm deserving of this amount? When you understand that something has been done, you go into that room and you say, I know how Disney has structured this thing. So this is what value we bring into Disney. And this is the amount that accompanies that value, because this is what it does to your bottom line in Disney to have me in this particular position. So understanding even how to position that negotiation where someone can't say no. Like, we all know as we sit in this table what this is going to do to your organization or for your organization. You're giving me 10% of what you're actually going to make. That's a very different negotiation than saying I'm talented.
And yeah, I briefly.
There's plenty of you. There's a lot of you who are talented. But when you understand how your talent interfaces with the business conversation, you start to become a powerful figure, not just a personal brand. You start to become a powerful and dominating figure in particular spaces, industries, and even globally.
And you begin to own something.
And you begin to own.
Yeah.
Isn't it ironic? That's the name of her
company. Wow, my goodness. Okay, let's move to the second woman.
Second woman. I don't have my third, but I do have a second.
So hold on. We need to make sure you meet Oprah and have that interview. Guys, in the comment section, do the right thing. Let's tag Oprah everywhere.
I want to know. I really want to know. I really, really want to know. And she might not have the answer. But the special thing about asking her that question is because she can reflect back on some decisions that she made that was pivotal.
That was not ready. I mean, that one is so true.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think they're ready for her even today. But there's an acceptance. There's an acceptance of certain things.
but still, nobody would dare. I mean, I've seen people interact with Oprah, and all the big celebrities always start by saying, "Oh, you're looking younger." And I mean, of course she is, but I'm just saying, because she owns, they approach her properly.
Absolutely. They understand the opportunity that comes with that one conversation.
Yes. Okay, let's go next.
Second woman will be controversial, but it's very interesting. I'm reading a book called Discipline is Destiny. It is changing me. And just this morning, the chapter that they were unpacking, they used the Queen of England as an example.
Your choices. Okay, good to you.
I think absolutely what that woman did.
No, you're
with
right.
Poise.
You're right.
No sweat.
Sekulumanga, this language we're using right now, this is her language.
And I really believe in my soul that a lot of the ideologies that she had to protect and stand for were not hers.
Yeah, Elizabeth.
I don't think they were hers. But she had such a loyalty to the monarchy that she understood her job and she realized it was not about how she feels.
Yeah.
So I would want to ask her how she believed she lived a great life, if she feels there were a lot of moments she had to betray herself for the monarchy,
for the crown.
For the crown. And if
that
she did, she lived a great life.
First beat. But okay, if she did,
I really don't think she believed in those things, but she believed in the monarchy. She embraced the monarchy and she decided, I'm going to be loyal to this thing that's been built. Although I don't agree with a lot of what it stands for. I don't agree with a lot of the decisions that I have to make. But I am going to be disciplined enough to stand for everything that has already been built.
Yo. I mean,
and is that courage? I would ask her, do you think that's courage? To not want to shift it? I'd really be curious to understand what is the contract that she made with herself. It was over 80 years.
Yo.
And she worked every day.
I mean, I'm just thinking about the fact that, so I drive a Range Rover. So one of the things somebody said to me, they were like, "Oh, you're driving the Queen's car." And I was like, "Oh, what do you mean?" And they then explained to me to say, "Oh, the Queen liked driving a Range Rover. There are pictures of her driving herself, right? And that's very unqueen-like, but obviously she's got the whole thing." And somebody said she stopped driving in public because of who she was, but she truly loved Range Rover, right? And I thought to myself to say, if she truly loved Range Rover, another human being would have betrayed the throne and said, doing a road trip with Range Rover, let's go, you know. But there's just that one rare picture where she's behind the wheel and she's got that Duke there. And your loyalty, I mean, it goes to the point where even the car, because she always drove Range Rover, the royal family always drive a Range Rover. It was never a thing of like, oh, I feel like driving a Lamborghini. Or I feel, whereas any other human being might be like, oh, okay, and I mean, the picture will slip. But she kept that. And it means so much for so many generations to say, oh, no, the Queen can have all the money in the world because she doesn't buy Ferraris. She doesn't, people still. But yeah, so profound. And I mean, about your question about courage.
I'm really curious how she negotiated some of the things with herself. We're very emotional beings and we struggle with discipline because sometimes we opt for our feelings. And sometimes discipline has nothing to do with how I feel. It's about what needs to be done. So if I wake up in the morning and I don't want to go to gym, there's going to be consequences. And yes, the feeling is valid, but what needs to be done? So I have to consistently betray the feeling for the outcome. Right? I would ask her how many times she did that. Did she get used to it? Did she ever feel lost in it? Did she feel like she knew who she was until a specific point and she had to let go of the idea of knowing who she was and she had to become what was asked of her? What was it in her that made her decide? I mean, Margaret said no. The uncle said no. What was it in her that made her able, because I don't want to say comfortable, that made her able to commit to this narrative for over 80 years. Every single day, she had to wake up and be a queen. Whatever that came with on any given day.
And I mean, it hits home harder because we see the younger royal and we see how there's always this scandal and that scandal and this and that and the other. And
I don't think anyone has done it like her.
yeah,
I think even the people before her. There's some, especially as a woman.
Oh, but one person who did exceptionally was the former king, King God wills of Utini. I think he was, yeah.
It's similar, right?
Yes,
It's similar. Well, he had his things. He had his things that said this is the man. But have we ever seen the woman in Queen Elizabeth? You get me? Have we ever said that that was the woman part in her?
Yeah. Not even in the speech. I've never heard her say...
Not in any scandal. All the scandals were about the monarchy.
Yes.
They were not her doing her.
For all we know, she could have wanted to go buy a Birkin herself. But
there's a lot of things she could have wanted that she had to constantly negotiate with herself, that there was something bigger. That's another thing. Yeah. That's another thing.
It's also, I mean, he could have flown first class and gone for beach holidays, but he was busy figuring out how this device that I'm using.
I guess the question is, what is greatness? That's where we start, right? What is greatness? You know, is it losing yourself in a pursuit? We'll remember those people. We'll remember those people. We'll remember. And let me tell you, Mpho, like, I'm not going to lie to you. The evolution I'm going through myself is requiring a lot of leaving myself behind and focusing on the outcome. I can tell you many stories of how many negotiations I've had with myself about that not being the thing that needs to happen. But often the people that change the world, the people we'll remember, which is not really my pursuit, are the people that made decisions and they stuck to them.
I mean, Jesus stuck to the cross.
Absolutely. And I wanted my third woman to be in the Bible, but I don't know who my third woman is. I don't know who my third woman is. But I think actually my third woman would be my grandmother.
Oh, wow.
I have makeup on so I can't cry.
Yeah.
And we're not doing that kind of podcast. There's certain things, I just turned 40. My grandmother died when she was in her 60s. I was 21, if I'm not mistaken. And she was, I say this every time I describe her because this was her energy. You know Winnie Mandela's energy? Like, I can be a mom, but don't come for me because it's going to happen, right? But so poised, gracious, beautiful, ladylike, but fierce. And I always say Winnie Mandela comes to mind. And I loved her and she loved me and she believed in me. And I'm the result of that belief. Through and through, I'm the result of that belief. I'm the result of all the things she didn't do well also to raise us, you know, because there's no perfect person. And as I grew older, there's certain things I understand better that I don't have a chance to ask her now. And the certain things I've also understood about my own power that existed in her. And I would ask her if she truly believes that I'm powerful enough to change the lineage. Because I believe that that is what I need to do, but I think I doubt it sometimes. And I think speaking to someone who had the same task, it would be interesting to ask what they think I can do better than what they did. So I'm not going to cry. And you can't look at me like that. But, you know, it just came to me that my grandmother would be in that room, you know. For her to meet some of the women that she would have wanted to meet, she was a powerful woman. She was a powerful figure with everything she had and with nothing. She just exuded power, you know. And sometimes silent, sometimes aggressive, sometimes loud. but consistently powerful. And she had a very difficult upbringing, and I only found out now when she's gone, how did she reconcile that her life looked the way that it looked, and how did she still carry all this power, even with nothing being a symbol of you have been blessed, maybe, And what did she understand? I recently said to my aunt, when I die, as much as I've experienced a lot of challenges, and I continue to experience challenges, I want you to know that I was very happy. I don't want you to look at how my life looked and think I was unhappy. I'm happy. And I've reconciled with myself that I'm going to have to take a back seat, and there's decisions that I'm going to need to make for the lineage in my own family, but for the lineage of women also in the world. Because the work I do is generational. When you empower a woman, it shifts the entire narrative in that family line. And I'm very clear about that. So woman empowerment is not a very simple thing for me. It's a deeply spiritual thing for me. I understand the role of women, and I understand what empowered women do.
Oof. Sure.
So it would be my grandmother.
Wow. I mean, what a journey, what an experience. I think, those three questions, sure. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. What a moment. That was a moment. And I think it brings us to the end of our podcast. And I want to ask you the question to say, what is it that you want to be remembered?
When people think about me, I want them to believe that they can do the unthinkable. Whatever doesn't exist in that moment, they can be the person that brings it forward. In my pursuits, as difficult as they are, I'm constantly challenging myself to solve for a problem that I can't even see the picture of what it looks like when it's solved. But I fundamentally believe that there's a universal shift when it's solved. I will not live to see it, and I've embraced that. I'm very clear about that. But I understand that if I commit and I get the succession right, the world that my kids will live in will be very different from the one that I live in. And I think the lack of commitment, particularly with African people, to this is the reason that we're still suffering, and it could have been resolved a couple of generations before.
Whoa. I can't allow you to close on that note, because I think there's just so much to unpack. Allow me to play the role of the men that I see in society that I don't fully agree with. Allow me to be the antagonist to the story that say, but women are supposed to give birth, nurture children, take care of the family, and men will go out and work. Allow me to bring that narrative and you explain this, the other side to you. Where does that start? Where a man says, no, women are not supposed to be
economically empowered.
Yeah, to say this empowerment thing.
The irony, if you were close to me, is you would find that I'm extremely traditional. I value the role of men. I think the role of men is important, but I don't think a lot of men are playing that role.
I see.
In a world where men were playing their role, in a world where we were not seeing millions of women-led homes, we could be having a different conversation. But the reality is women need money. And they need a lot of it.
Oh, I have nothing else to say.
I get how people take this conversation and they think about their girlfriend who they don't want to empower, right? Because I feel a lot of men, when they hear the woman empowerment conversation, they think about the girl they're dating or their wife. They don't think about the number of women who don't have men in their lives, who have been let down by men, who have not been led by men, who have not been provided for by men. What do we say to them? What do we say? The statistics say in South Africa, there are more woman-led homes, sole parents, like single parents who are raising boys, which is another problem that we're going to have to deal with in the future, because boys need their dads. I can teach my son certain things, but I can't teach my son to be a man because I don't know how to be a man. I've never been a man. I can teach them a version of manhood that is estrogen-driven.
Yeah, and imagine if you didn't have a present father, you have no version.
I don't have a version if I didn't have a present father. So I'm not even going to go to that narrative. But for the men listening, you don't need permission from a woman to be a man. Because often men will say, yeah, this woman, you don't need permission from a woman to be a man. When you lead, you lead. When you decide that you're going to honor your responsibility as a man, it doesn't matter how empowered the woman is. You can stand as a man. And let me tell you, as a woman who's navigated parts of my seasons where I was highly masculine and highly feminine, it was always determined by the man I was standing next to. If I needed to rise up and be masculine, or I felt safe enough to fall into my femininity. And those are the choices that women are facing every single day. I'm going to repeat, Mpho. You don't need permission from a woman to be a man.
And I mean, just to round it up, how do we fix it? Because the way you've explained the problem to me is distinct, because the way that I understood the problem as equal opportunity. And I've always looked at it in that way. But the way you've explained it, you're saying it can't even be equal opportunity because we've got people who are in apartheid. We need to first rescue them out of the apartheid, and then we can then talk about equal. And I mean, that was the part that I thought shocked, because I mean, we've got all these women that are spending money on raising children while these men are maybe drinking the money or whatever the case is. We've got, they're still in, there's an apartheid system that's oppressing them. How do we fix it? What is it that viewers, companies, people can do to fix this?
It's quite ironic that you literally use the word apartheid, because particularly the South African problem starts there. And we have to acknowledge that. The way that the system took the father away from the home disrupted the home. It's not because Black people are stupid. And I feel like sometimes there's such a disempowering narrative. We have to go to the source of why things look the way that they look. The father was taken away from the home and they had to go and work. And a lot of young men who are leading homes now didn't have someone lead them.
Because he came to Johannesburg to go and work at them.
He came to Johannesburg to work at the mines, and he was oppressed. So he only understood power by oppressing. Oof. That's how power looked to him.
If Bas
the GBV issues that we face, a lot of the problems that we face in this country, it's not a personality or a race problem. It's a system issue. The system designed it to be this way. We are dealing with the remnants of our history. And that's why I say it's important for people to choose their position and make the sacrifices that they need to make for a lot of these things to shift. I can't solve the man problem because I'm not a man, right? But men need to understand what their role is in society. They need to understand what their role is. And they need to understand when they don't step into that role, what does it mean to the young boys that are coming up. And if men decide to focus on just creating wealth for themselves and not understanding the socio-economic challenges that are going to exist, whether you are wealthy or not, and how they're going to affect you, because this young boy is going to rob you at the corner. He's going to take your Range Rover. He's going to make you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So if there is no commitment to men standing up and saying, I'm going to build a personal brand that defines what a man is, and I'm going to rally young boys to engage with that energy, and I'm going to help other men do that, and we're going to rally and we're going to help young boys understand how to treat women, how to respect women, how to honor a woman, not because it does anything for women except that it makes the society works. So I can't solve the man problem, but I do know that there are women who are getting into relationships because they need money. There are women who are getting beaten up every day because they need money. There are women who have prominent husbands who take their kids to the most prominent schools and go and abuse their wives who need money. So this cuts across
that.
It cuts across class. It cuts across race. The economic independence of women is important because we're in the state that we're in. Unfortunately, we can't stop fixing that problem to fix the other problem. These have to kind of work together, and we have to move forward and see what we want to see. But we have to commit.
But what about the globalists? Because I mean, the more you speak about this, and I think I've listened to both sides of the coin. I've listened to World Economic Forum agendas, and I've also listened to the Donald Trumps and the guys that are saying, "Oh, we have issues here." And I've often found that a lot of the men hide behind words that society has been taught not to question. Like, for example, I had a conversation with somebody about this, and he said, "But the man is the leader." And he said, "That's how it is, accepted, the man is the leader." And I said to them, "But I think if the woman can do something better, she can lead, right?" And he said, "No, but the man is the leader." And he kept coming back to like that, hey, even the Bible says, hey, the man is the... And at the end of that conversation, he then comes and says, the guys that are trying to swap it around and villainizes it and says, these guys that are fighting for equal pay and this and that, they're basically breaking the family structure. Now you're going to have women paying men. So they switch the story to say, oh, women will now bribe the men and they paint this narrative where at the end of it you sort of think, okay, maybe these World Economic Forum might be on the wrong ear. But I think that the era that they keep forgetting is that the status quo at the moment.
The status quo.
Yeah.
We can be idealistic. Me, I would love to do a gender woman and not worry about feeding my family and everything else that I'm responsible for, right? Just do a gender woman, empower women, and that's it. And it can be a frivolous thing where we just do brunches and we have fun, right? And we don't affect the status quo. If there is a structure that allows me to do that, maybe I could pick that. But does the structure exist? Does the structure exist that allows women to fall back into that? And let me tell you, yesterday at the office, I was speaking to a Gen Z, and it's such a fascinating conversation. I'm enjoying this conversation so much because I love speaking to thinkers. She says to me, she's Congolese, and she was just at home. And she was painting the picture of the Congolese home versus the South African home and the dynamics of relationships in the two environments. And absolutely, South Africa is one of the most westernized countries in the continent. And I don't say that in a way that makes it better. I don't think West is better. I'm saying the semantics say we look like the West. Doesn't mean we're better. Now, what does that mean for how South Africa engages, like South Africans engage with anything in the world? How South Africa engages with the continent, the rest of the continent, right? Who we think we are, what we're exposed to, what we believe about their exposure or limits in exposure. And she says to me, a lot of families in Congo are mom and dad and kids. And dad is the provider. Mom can decide to work if she wants to, but she doesn't need to because dad is providing. And mom is a princess. She's taken care of. She said, my mom has never driven her whole life. She can drive. She chooses not to because that's what her dad wants. She mustn't drive. She drives her around or the kids drive her around. So that's still the dynamic. That's the idealistic dynamic where the woman feels safe enough to take on that role. Safe enough to take on that role and run with it because it's an area where they're strong, maybe, right? And I'm talking about the family dynamic now. And dad honors his role and he provides. And they've been together for 40 years and that's been uninterrupted. Safe space. Kids, they know what to expect. There's routine, there's consistency. The family brand is thriving, right? And then you come to South Africa maybe, and I don't want to villainize South Africa, but maybe let's say Western adopting environments where there has been a break in the trust, because that's where it starts. Can I trust you to show up in the way that you say you want to show up? or do I need to do this myself? Right? So there has been a break in the trust when it comes to the family structure and how it should exist. People don't just wake up and say, I want to fight for all my life, right? There's something that drives that energy. I know where it comes from for me, and I know what motivates it, and I know my why. And as I've grown older, I've found a healthy way to also interface with that energy. So when this break in trust happens, then we see the society that we live in, where women feel that for their own safety and security, they need to be able to create and earn money for themselves. Because I've seen it too many times where the promise that was made was broken. And a 50-year-old woman who's never worked her entire life suddenly needs to go back to the market and work.
And there is no diverse settlement or whatever. He's moved the money to whoever's name, yeah.
And when we go into faith, yes, a lot of countries that are still anchored on faith are able to do that because it's not just the betrayal of my partner, it's the betrayal of God.
Yeah.
But in countries where that is not the key thing, I can betray you. Because at the core, what are my values aligned with? And I don't think they should be faith only, but there's a role that plays. And that's why that man brings that up. So this is the home context. Then I'm going to go into the office.
Sure.
This woman's trust has been broken and she needs to now figure out how to
survive to that standard that she was at.
And it's not just her. There's a herd of women who need to be led in the office. And the man who is the leader, this side, doesn't know how to lead all these women whose trust have been broken and who are in the workplace. There has to be an understanding. One of the ways that women lead, which is powerful and helps organization growth and shifts societies, is empathy. Their ability to understand who these women are and who these men are. The person you were speaking to was not willing to empathize. They were stuck to what they believed. We see that a lot in our counterparts when they lead. They do what they understand works. But they are not agile enough to understand that societally there's a shift that's taking place. You're in a knowledge-based economy with women who need to raise families because not everyone has this figure who's a leader, driving things and providing and deciding on all of these things. So fundamentally at the core of human beings, we have to always look back and not just be optical in how we engage with things, right? And I could sit with someone else who can show me a different argument and I would learn from it, right? I'm exposing you to what I understand. I'm exposing you to what I empathize with as a leader myself. When I engage with people, I try and understand. That's my first point. I try and understand what drives this agenda that you have or this understanding that you have. Oh, okay. Can I change it? Yes. Can I not? No. I move on. And I'm always very particular about where I spend my time, right? So when I decide to come on a podcast like this, I have to fundamentally believe that it's going to be valuable. I'm going to be spending my time in a valuable way. It's going to impact someone and it's going to shift and it's going to drive my agenda beyond where it is now. So I'm very particular about where I spend my time and who I spend my time with because there's a lot of work to be done. So we have to really investigate things beyond how we feel and really look at where does this data come from? Why are things this way? And stop idealizing life experiences where we find ourselves in an ideal structure where men are going out to hunt. Great. But that's not where we are.
Oh, I mean, we've opened up so many nuances, traditions and cultures and so many people that would disagree. But I think for me, the concern is that you can fight the debate of yes, no. But because children are involved, the mother has to win.
The mother has to win.
Yeah.
The mother has to win.
I think beyond that, for me, it's to say where the children are involved, the mother has to win. We all know.
In my natural state, and I'm going to say natural because I'm a highly feminine, I have estrogen, that's the high hormone in my body. It instructs a lot of how I am and who I am and my decision making. I love being taken care of. I love being doted. I love sitting in my feminine. I love self-care. And if I had to choose to live like that and be in a trustworthy environment where I know I can build a home and I can raise my kids and I can teach them good values and they can see a magnificent figure who is driving those values, and we don't need double income to live in the economy that we're in. Idealistic situation. That's not what that is not even 1% of the society around the world. Sometimes it's the economy that informs the fact that we need to both work. What does that mean to you leading and me following and all those dynamics? So of course at each home, people figure it out for themselves, but I think we should not be distracted by the ideal scenarios of our own personal homes and think about all the other people who don't have that scenario.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think for me, the leadership conversation has shifted completely because we can no longer stick to those social norms of iron fist, the man is the leader. It's contextual.
It's contextual.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, I believe at their strongest, when men lead well, it sets a beautiful tone for society when they lead well, right? And I think even the need for leadership in organizations is informed by the fact that women need to be led. It's not just men who are led anymore in organizations. In Thomas Edison steel factory, it's just men, authoritative, knows how to deal with them. That's the structure of leadership. That's that.
That's the textbook.
That's not what we're dealing with now. We have women who have context who need to be led and who need to be led well. And in an economy, and there's also men who need empathy, right? So when you are an autocratic leader who does not harness some of these other traits that can make you a great leader, in a society where we have to talk about diversity and inclusion, where's your empathy? In a society where you have to be agile because things are shifting all the time, we haven't seen men lead in an agile way very well. In a society where people value intimacy in leadership, we haven't seen that happen very well. But women are able to do that because it's intriguing. They care. When I'm speaking to you, I want to know you. I want to see how I can help you develop and grow. It's in my nature to nurture, right? So these are things that are important. We must stop being idealistic. We're not in a steel factory where it's just men working. Yeah. There's so much that's happening now that we need to kind of account for.
Intimacy in leadership. This is the second time I'm hearing this term. What is that?
I think for me, it's an ability to make people feel seen and safe when they're led by you. And they are not high anxiety and high functioning anxiety. And have you ever worked in an environment where you wake up at 3 a.m. and you're panicking because what could go wrong tomorrow? What could he be unhappy about? What could she be unhappy about, right? The ability for leaders to create, there's a term that's also been trending now, psychological safety. Do I feel like it's safe for me to express my views? Do I feel like I can bring new ideas? Do you know how much psychological safety affects innovation in organizations because people are able to think? They're not holding back their thoughts. It's transformative if you create the level of safety, intimacy that allows people to bring who they are. Because in our diversity, we thrive. Your experiences are very different from mine. And if you feel like you can share yours, then the organization is not shaped just by my experiences. They're shaped by yours as well.
Wow. So profound. So profound. We were supposed to close with the question of us. What's the legacy? Yes, we've just delved in.
Yes.
Ask and say, because as you were speaking, I kept thinking, you keep saying that, your mission and what you're doing is a generational thing. And I want to ask you to say, maybe 40, 50 years from now, what does success look like? What would you in heaven or what you do believe in be happy to say, look, I came and I shifted the generation? What does that look like for you?
There's a lot of brokenness in our families around the world. And when people can't meet their basic needs, just basic fundamental needs, and one of them is safety, right? So you can have a lot of money, you can have food, but you don't feel safe. And you don't feel safe because there is a level of healing that also needs to happen with you. You don't feel safe because maybe the environments that you are working in particular, I'm talking about women, don't see you, they don't identify you as an asset. And that's why we have our golden circle. And I was very specific in saying my why is addressing the internal and external barriers to economic empowerment, because there are also things we need to address as women internally, and how we're not moving ourselves forward, how we're not confident, and what is affecting that, and how do we overcome that? How do we become more disciplined if we need to be disciplined, or courageous if we need to be courageous? So we can't solve for the one and not preparing women for the opportunity once it shows up. So I understand that if we do this work well, who knows? Maybe we go back to the idealistic society. Yeah. But at the core of that idealistic society is women feeling safe. Women feeling safe because they can go and spend the money that they own, because they can go and pick what it is that they want to do, because maybe the partner that they have leads well in the home. Because I want this conversation of men leading to be very clear, that we can talk from a context of home, we can talk from a context of work, and it doesn't mean that if you do well at home, you'll do well at work.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean if you do well at work, you can do well at home.
That's true.
So for me, the empowerment of women economically allows for them to feel safe enough to show up in the best version of who they can be in any lifetime.
So many nuggets. I mean, my mind is literally numb from all the thoughts that I've learned. Thank you so much for availing yourself and for the great work that you're doing.
Thank you. And thank you for him. And thank you for creating this platform. I have to tell you, when I was invited, I did look online. And the first thing that was very evident for me is the quality of the conversation and the quality of the people that you pick, and their expertise and ability to engage you, because I think you have a brilliant mind. So thank you for making time to do this outside of your many pursuits. It's going to change a lot of people.
Thank you. Thank you so much.